With the conclusion of the first season of Loki, we've now had a fair sampling of Marvel's Disney Plus shows. While none of them have quite been able to hit that ultra-satisfying level we might be more used to with the MCU films, the Disney Plus stories have given us some great moments, and some not-so-great ones. So out of the 3 shows we've seen so far, which one is the best? Here's your obvious spoiler warning, and let's get into it. We'll talk about these in chronological order, so we'll kick things off with WandaVision. Right from the start, this show promised to be very different from what we were used to in the Marvel world. The first couple episodes were spot-on recreations of Nick at Night classics like I Love Lucy and Bewitched, to the point where people who were looking for a more traditional Marvel story were a little turned off. The old boss is coming to dinner storyline, but where's the punching and the quipping? If you didn't have even a passing knowledge of those old shows, you might have overlooked a lot of the excellent details in the costumes and sets, not to mention the Pleasantville-esque, slightly unsettling vibe of this highly artificial TV world. They were setting us up for something. A twist was coming, a mystery was unraveling, and you just had to stay tuned to find out what it would be. But people didn't want to wait for the ride. They wanted to spend countless hours watching endless YouTube speculation and reading a zillion and one hot takes from every corner of the internet. Remember when everyone was sure that Mephisto was going to show up? Or that Doctor Strange was going to arrive in Westview to clean things up? Or remember when we were going to see John Krasinski as Reed Richards, even though there was never any indication of that outside of fan art and comic book movie clickbait articles? It got to the point where Mephisto speculation became a meme in and of itself, and it started to take away from the story the show was actually telling. We were learning all this interesting stuff about Wanda and Vision's relationship, meeting the scene-stealing Agatha Harkness played to absolute perfection by Kathryn Hahn.
And I killed Sparky, too.
And we were even watching a really fun performance from Evan Peters, but people just wanted to talk about what was next rather than what was actually on the show. The strongest part of WandaVision was not really the big universe-altering stuff. Where the show really succeeded was in shining a spotlight on Wanda Maximoff, who sometimes got lost in the shuffle in the greater MCU. From the blockbusters, we knew she was a Sokovian orphan who had reality-warping powers and a speedster brother who died in Age of Ultron. We saw her accidentally blow up a building and then shoot some magic red stuff during the airport fight in Civil War, but beyond some action scenes and feeling mopey about not quite being able to control her powers, we didn't really get to know her. Even her romance with Vision happened mostly off-screen, and beyond a brief moment in Infinity War, we didn't really see them interacting as a loving couple. But WandaVision changed that. Through the hyper-stylized world of classic TV, we got to know Wanda. We saw her grief, her strength, and her internal conflict as she wrestled with being a hero who also did some pretty horrible stuff. She was more complex and interesting than we've ever seen her, and I was totally on board for that. So I didn't even need the big battle and people throwing CGI magic at each other to feel like the show was satisfying. And then there was the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If you were one of those people who hated WandaVision because it was too weird and different, you probably liked this show a lot because it was much more traditional. Rather than mystical comic stuff with witches and magic, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier gave us a much more grounded story about terrorism, politics, and some ambitious but sometimes clunky social commentary. If you didn't like that WandaVision was about emotions like grief and loss over big Marvel action, this was a show with lots of punching and cool dudes doing cool dude stuff. It reminded me a lot of walking down the toy aisles when I was a kid, because you'd have the girls' toys and they were always stuff like Barbie dream houses and ponies, and then the boys' toys were always muscled action man with punching action and grenade launcher. But Falcon and Winter Soldier did a pretty good job of sort of sneaking in the more emotional storyline. Bucky Barnes, who had the strongest character development in the series for me, did a lot of dealing with the repercussions of being a superpowered brainwashed assassin for decades. And yes, I know that saying that sentence earnestly would have sounded so weird like 10 years ago. Likewise, talking about racial tensions in America through a comic book show about a guy who flies around with metal wings would have sounded pretty weird even 5 years ago. This was the stuff the show really nailed. John Walker and the entitled dude who lets power corrupt him. Really interesting and played really well by Wyatt Russell. Isaiah Bradley and America's history of treating black servicemen as disposable. Excellent. A 100-year-old white dude who was basically saved by black women and ends up invited to the cookout? I'm here for it. But the show couldn't just be about growth and character depth. We had to have action sequences. And action sequences require a villain to punch, so we had to have Carly, one of the weakest MCU villains since Malekith from Thor: The Dark World. I can see what they were trying to do with Carly and how they were trying to attempt to explore what would realistically happen to the world after an enormous event like the Thanos snap. I just felt like her whole doing bad things for the right reasons storyline was poorly realized, and I constantly felt bored and frustrated when they would cut from something interesting with Sam and Bucky to just Carly spouting cliches. So that brings us to Loki, which is arguably the biggest of the Marvel Disney Plus shows. Everyone loves Loki. He's so charismatic and engaging that he's able to go from the big bad in the first Avengers movie to a good guy we're rooting for in his final appearance in Infinity War. And a lot of that is down to Tom Hiddleston's performance, which is just always so great. Loki is probably the show people were most looking forward to out of the initial Disney Plus lineup. The trailers looked awesome. Loki as DB Cooper? Come on! And people were so hyped up about Owen Wilson joining the MCU. The first episode had a pretty solid balance of things we remember from past movies and new interesting stuff. Like WandaVision, they were setting something up, and we knew there was a mystery to discover, but they weren't as reliant on everything being a clue. Or maybe the internet was just nervous about rampant speculation after Mephistogate, because people just seemed more on board with seeing how everything would play out in Loki. The mystery we did get was much more epic than in the previous two shows, and it was clear pretty early on that this show was the real doorway into the next phase of the MCU. They were putting away the Infinity Saga, literally showing the stones in a drawer to tell us that they were moving on from that idea, and they were introducing us to the crazy world of multiverse stuff. Rick and Morty vibes aside, this kind of thing gives them tons of story potential in the future, so bringing in all the split timelines and Nexus events here is a pretty big deal. And while I appreciate the show's place in the larger MCU and the way that it kicks off what will probably be the next Infinity Gauntlet level problem, there were a few times when I felt like Loki was a little disjointed. Like they weren't quite sure what kind of show it was going to be, so instead of picking one idea, they just did like 7 ideas at the same time. Is it about the god of mischief time hopping through history? Sort of. Is it about a big bureaucratic organization that controls the universe? Yeah, kind of. Is it about Loki battling different versions of himself from other universes? A little bit. It's about enemies becoming allies, but like in a different way than we've already seen, I guess. It's about Loki learning to be the good guy, but in a different way than he learned to be the good guy in Ragnarok. It's about a secret group that controls everything, but might be more sinister than we initially thought, but in a different way than when Hydra took over S.H.I.E.L.D. in The Winter Soldier. It's a little bit about a lot of things, but not a lot about any one thing. And I think that's what keeps it from making it to the top of my list. So for me, none of the Disney Plus Marvel shows were a total slam dunk, but I think WandaVision had the most interesting ideas. And the fact that it was so new and different puts it just a little bit above the others. But we've still got What If, Armor Wars, Moon Knight, and all sorts of other stuff coming to Disney Plus. So we'll see if anything takes the crown as we continue on the never-ending Marvel journey. Which of the 3 Disney Plus shows did you like the best? Tell me in the comments or tweet me at Trashwire and tell me your fave. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.